What's happening, everyone? Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to take a look at the very fine band from Great Britain who weren't enormously successful, but for those in the progressive rock community, a band that's very beloved for their brand of symphonic, classical, art rock, or progressive rock. We're talking about Renaissance. All right. I know not everybody knows them, but if you're a longtime prog fan, you've probably heard some of their older albums. Maybe you've heard some of their stuff on the radio back in the early mid-'70s, right? Never a huge band, kind of missed out on the big, chance at superstardom. Probably should have been, though. But their music is epic and melodic and charming and just kind of just real majestic type music, right? Just really a band that I always really dug a lot, with the soaring female vocals and the majestic piano and keyboards, acoustic guitar, muscular lead bass, very cool rhythms and songs that kind of, like I said, bridge like classical, folk, prog rock, jazz, kind of all into one mix, right? For a really unique sound. There's no other band like them. No other band like them. So, but, kind of strange beginnings for the band. So they formed in like 1969, kind of out of the ashes of the Yardbirds, right? So former Yardbird member Keith Relf and Jim McCarty formed this new band calling it Renaissance. Wanted to do something along the lines of classical sounding rock with keyboard player John Hawken, bassist Louis Sinamo, and Keith's sister Jane Relf on vocals. Okay. They would also hook up for lyrics with Betty Thatcher, who would provide lyrics for the band throughout their career. So these guys would go on and they release a couple studio albums with that first lineup of the band, and then that band would slowly start to disintegrate. All members eventually leaving, newer members coming in and taking over, and that would kind of form the classic era of the band, Renaissance. Okay. And, that lineup, would include Annie Haslam on lead vocals. Okay. Michael Dunford on acoustic and electric guitars, mostly acoustic guitars. Okay. John Tout on keyboards, pianos, mostly keyboards, synths later on. Okay. The incredible John Camp on bass guitar. For my money, one of the most incredible bass players in that era, of the 70s. One of those guys that probably should have always been kind of discussed alongside guys like Chris Squire and Geddy Lee, so on and so forth. Just a fantastic drummer. And, all sorts of, bass player I'm talking about. And on drums in that early part of the band also, you had Terry Slade, okay, playing drums for the band, as well as Terry Sullivan was the guy who kind of carried the drum kit for them throughout the decade. So, that's the classic lineup of the band. Of course, it would change over the years as they got into the 90s, and then again, made their way into the 2000s, because there was a long period of inactivity where the band broke up and what have you. So a lot of really cool albums, some that are not quite as successful as others, obviously. So I'm going to rank them in the order that I like them. All right, feel free to do it yourself down in the comments below. Rank the whole catalog. Give us your top 3 or 5 or whatever. Remember, we all hear these differently, so there's no right or wrong answer here. So I'm going to go, and we got 13 albums we're looking at here. A couple of them I don't have on CD, but I've heard many times. So I'm going to go at the bottom of the list. There's 2 of them that are by far their weakest albums. I had a hard time deciding which one would sit at the bottom, because they both are not great. I think they're kind of fun and have their moments, but there comes a time, the Renaissance decided to continue on into the early 80s at a time where new wave and synth pop was kind of all the rage, and they kind of proceeded to follow suit, with half the band leaving, getting some new members, and putting out these 2 albums that, while if you listen to them, they're kind of fun, and they do have some good songs, it's not really the Renaissance that we had grown to love prior to that. So I'm going to go from 1983 as my number 13, Timeline. I almost made this number 12 and flip-flop these 2 at the bottom, but I think they both have their moments. They're both kind of quirky. They're both kind of fun. And it's almost like a shame that these albums didn't kind of catch on with the general public, because I think there is some, decent tracks on here. There you can see Annie with her teased hair, right? You get the guys there looking, Michael Dunford and John Kemp looking all sorts of new wave-ish, right? A little flock of seagulls going on there. But, the music, there's some good songs on here. Flight is a quirky, cool song that has a lot of those Renaissance characteristics. Missing Persons is kind of fun. Chagrin Boulevard is actually a very good tune, as is Richard the Ninth. Okay, but a lot of the rest of it just kind of like doesn't really work. It's kind of like synth poppy, and it just sounds like Renaissance really reaching. Autotech's not a bad song. Orient Express is okay. Electric Avenue has its moments. I don't know. I just doesn't quite work. But, revisiting all these years later, it's not terrible. It's just not, it's not classic Renaissance. Same can be said with Camera, okay, which came out in 81. Similar type of problem here, very kind of new wavy, synthy, okay. Title track, I don't like some of the vocals in it. I think, Annie trying to do this really, really high-pitched kind of quirky thing, which it doesn't quite work. But I think the chorus is really great. Camera, it's really catchy, and the instrumentation is pretty good. So I like the tune overall. Fairies, Living at the Bottom of the Garden, kind of a cool tune. Bonjour Swan Song is actually a very good song. That's the last song that Betty Thatcher would actually write for the band. I believe it's the only one on the album. So basically she was walking away from supplying lyrics to the band. Tarantula, I actually dig. What else? Ukraine Ways, very good song. Kind of classic Renaissance-y sounding. Got some nice piano. The rest of it, kind of, early mid 80s, early 80s synth pop. Yeah, it doesn't work as a whole. All right. Next up, I'm going to go number 11, which I don't have to show you, but from 1970, their second album, Illusion. Okay, that's the second album with the original band. All right. I think, on that album, because the first album is very different from all the others. The second album, they're trying to move into more of that kind of piano-led classical rock style. I find the songs kind of meander a bit. It's just kind of like missing something, which is a reason why that one ranks kind of low. There are a couple tunes on there that are kind of really proggy, but for the most part, I find, I don't know, I just find that album just is kind of lacking focus. The band's trying to figure out what the hell to do. I know some of the elements are there, which would come into even greater effect on the Prologue album, which would come out not that long afterwards, right? What do we got? Number 10, I'm going to go with their big reunion album from 2001, Tuscany. All right, this is not all the original guys, but or gals, I should say. But Annie Haslam's on board, Michael Dunford, Terrence Sullivan on drums, Mickey Simmons on keyboards. I'm trying to remember Mickey Simmons, who he played with. Did he play with Camel? Might have played keyboards with Camel, or was it Jadis? One of those other British bands? I don't remember, but Mickey Simmons was a known guy in the prog rock community for his keyboard work. And this is actually a pretty fine album. It's very mellow, but the spirit of the kind of majestic, classically inspired Renaissance music is alive and well here. You got 10 tracks on here. Pearls of Wisdom is a really strong song. What else we got here? Lady from Tuscany is pleasant. Dolphin's Prayer. Good stuff. Maybe lacking a little energy, all right, for me. And that's why I like the follow-up, which came 12 years later, Grandini Il Vento, which also was reissued like a year or two later with extra tracks. I think it was called Symphony of Light. They changed the name, but this was the original release, okay, Grandini Il Vento from 2013. This, again, a kind of revised lineup. This is the last lineup that would include guitar player and chief songwriter Michael Dunford, who would pass away not long after this release, or right before the release, actually. And but it's actually a very good album. The Symphony of Light is actually a very strong song. The title track is great. Cry to the World, excellent. Porcelain, very strong track. I find this album, compared to Tuscany, is a little more energy to this album. It's a little more upbeat, which I kind of really dig. But it's got, Annie still sounds great. What a tremendous vocalist she is. And the sweeping arrangements and orchestrations and everything like that. It's just a very, very cool song that kind of, takes you back to like maybe Song for All Seasons era Renaissance from like the late 70s. All right, next up, I'm going to go for number 8. I'm going to go with the 1979's Azure Dior. which is the band starting to move towards more commercial sounding music, shorter songs, but it still has that classic Renaissance sound. Jekyll and Hyde is a terrifically addicting song. I dig that quite a bit. The Winter Tree is really good. Golden Key, The Flood of Lions, all right, Secret Mission, top to bottom, very strong album. Not as maybe epic as some of the albums that came before it. So there's no real like lengthy songs, big bombastic songs, shorter compositions, but still very much sounding like a Renaissance album. Okay, I dig it. Next up, we're going to go to 1969 for their debut Renaissance, self-titled, coming in at number 7. A very kind of experimental album. Again, I don't think the band really knew exactly what they wanted to do. It's kind of bluesy in spots. It's kind of like that early proto-prog in other spots. There are some orchestrations going on. Got lovely, vocals from Jane Ralph. Some nice guitar work going on there. Good keyboards, right? Some piano, some organ, things like that. To me, it's not a traditional sounding Renaissance album because, like I said, the band's still trying to figure out exactly how to do this. And they really, when you think about it, they really didn't figure it out because both those two Renaissance albums have like a lot of really different sounding material. Not as cohesive as the second and classic lineup of the band would have over the course of, 4 or 5 albums. You kind of knew what to expect with Renaissance. They would deliver these big bombastic songs with, great melodies and just majestic piano and the soaring vocals, the layers of acoustic guitars, the complex arrangements, right? The first two are very, very different beasts. But I find that there's I love the music from that period, right? Late 60s, early 70s. There's a certain charm about that first Renaissance album that I kind of dig. I dig the fact that it's so different. I dig the kind of little bluesy nature of some of the songs, and it's a little much more harder rocking than anything they would ever do, right? So that's why I rank that kind of high, because I think it's got its charm that I really dig. Next up, number 6, we're going to go to 1978 for A Song for All Seasons. This, of course, is the Esoteric Recordings remaster reissue. I have a couple of them here, I believe. Yep, I think I do. This is a pretty special album. Dig this one a lot. The title track is close to as good as it gets from this band. These guys were amazing at doing like 10, 15-minute long epics, sometimes a little longer than that, compositions that just were just so mind-blowingly awesome. All right, just you talk about bombast, right, and just grand and majestic orchestrations, right, and just the killer vocals and the dramatic swells and things like that. Awesome stuff. Kindness at the end, another great song. She Is Love, opening out. Day of the Dreamer, great song. I don't know, top to bottom, very, very strong album, I think. Very strong. I almost ranked that higher than this one, but there's a couple, I don't know, there's something about this album I always really dug. From 1972, Prologue. This is the first with Haslam and Company. All right. So still kind of carrying on some of that experimentation from the 2 albums prior to it. It's a little more of a rockin' album compared to what would come after it. This is basically John Tatt on keyboards, Andy Haslam on vocals, Rob Hendry on guitars, mandolin and vocals. Okay. Michael Dunford was helping them out here with songwriting, but he wasn't an official member yet. So there's some electric guitar in this album that you would see a lack of for the next bunch of albums, mostly acoustic guitar. John Camp on bass, Terry Sullivan on percussion, and Francis Monkman helping out on some VC3 synths on here. But a strong album. Title track is great, good instrumental track, very, very adventurous. Dig it. There's the great Kiev, which is a fantastic song. A lot of lyrics by Miss Thatcher on this album. Okay, Sounds of the Sea, excellent. Raja Khan, killer album. Bound for Infinity and Spare Some Love. Just think a couple really, really standout tracks. Again, could flip-flop with Song for All Seasons. All right, I kind of was tossed between that. If you ask me next week, I might put that one above this one, but I still dig them both quite a bit. They're very different from each other, though. All right, now for me, the absolute spectacular albums, okay? Coming in at number 4, we're going to go to 1977 for Novella. Great album cover artwork there. That's the band. That's the guys. Classic lineup of the band. Man, just, Midas Man, Can You Hear Me? The Sisters, Captive Heart, Touching One So Hard to Keep. I mean, every song is epic on here and just absolute grandiose symphonic art rock. This, if it wasn't for the other 3 that I'm going to get to next, this is like a mind-blowingly good album. But, they were on a run here. They basically released, 4 in a row that are just, you could say 5, you could say 6, right? Going to go with number 3, going to go in 1975, Scheherazade and Other Stories, which many folks may rank as their magnum opus, their best, okay? So it's got the epic long title track, okay? Songs of Scheherazade, which is, 24 minutes long. And it's, one of the best things they've ever done, without a doubt. You talk about the perfect kind of meshing of classical music and rock with some folk and jazz thrown in there for good measure. This album, right, basically. You got Trip to the Fair, which is absolutely lovely. All right, Annie's vocals on this album could be her best. The Vultures Fly High, one of my favorite tunes on the album. It's a shorter piece, but I always really dug it. I love the chorus. And then, of course, the magical Ocean Gypsy, the mesmerizing Ocean Gypsy, which is just such a dreamy track. Should have been a huge hit for the band. It's a favorite amongst Renaissance fans, but I think they could have made that work as a hit single. I think I always thought so. And one thing I did want to mention, I forgot to mention, the band only really ever had, because the reason I thought of this because talking hit singles, the only really hit single the band ever had was Northern Lights from the Song for All Seasons album. Another fine song, very, very accessible, a great little pop tune. You've probably heard it. If you're saying right now, if you're like of the age between like 45, 50, and 65, and you're like, God, I don't think I ever heard Renaissance, go listen to Northern Lights from the Song for All Seasons. You might remember that. That was, especially on the East Coast, they used to play that here on the radio quite a bit. Very fine song. That was like their lone hit single. I forgot to mention that before. So anyway, yeah, Scheherazade and Other Stories, number 3 for me. I know some might rank it higher, but I love these other two, like, even more. Number 2, I'm going to go 1973's Ashes Are Burning. Ashes Are Burning, a great title track. My God. The title track on here is just incredible. One, if possibly my favorite Renaissance. I think it's my favorite Renaissance song of all time. It's just so epic. It's just, it's so prog. It's got a great Moog synthesizer solo in the middle, and then a fantastic guest guitar solo from Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash at the end, which is just amazing. And, when they would play this live, if you have the Live at Carnegie Hall album or the King Biscuit Flower Hour live albums, they would stretch Ashes Are Burning out ridiculously long. And John Camp, the bass player, would do this, great lengthy Rickenbacker bass guitar solo, because he always played Rickenbackers, and it's that sound, man. It's on all these albums. Such a great bass player. In fact, they decided this band didn't go for like guitar solos. Instead, they went for like keyboard, piano, whatever solos, and bass solos. And that's why I'm telling you, such a great bass player, so underrated. But this album's got the majestic Can You Understand? It's got Let It Grow, On the Frontier, Carpet of the Sun. Another majestic song that could have been a hit. See the carpet of the sun. Just great melodies in that. The Chilling at the Harbor, and of course the epic Ashes Are Burning. I know what you're probably saying. It's like, but Pete, like, this album, top to bottom, is definitely stronger than this album. I probably agree with you, but this has like 3 songs that I absolutely adore on here. And for me, for today anyway, that's why I'm ranking it a little bit higher. So my number 1, it's been my number 1 favorite Renaissance album as long as I've been listening to these guys. 1974's Turn of the Cards. Great album cover art, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, it's a Hypnosis album cover right there. This, just for me, is just top to bottom, just amazing. First of all, it's got 2 of my other favorite songs from the band on here. You got Mother Russia. Again, if you never heard this band, listen to Mother Russia. Black Flame, another incredible song. Running Hard is just great, majestic, fast-paced, classical rock. Okay, I Think of You, Things I Don't Understand, quirky and whimsical, all right? And then Cold as Being, another fantastic song. I tell you, great stuff. Why this band wasn't thought of and ranked as one of the greatest progressive rock bands of the era based on a lot of these albums, kind of mind-boggling, because a lot of this material is as potent and fantastic as some of the best from Yes and Genesis and Pink Floyd and Jethro Tull and Camel and all those bands that Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Gentle Giant, all that stuff. Some of these albums, man, are just magical. I'm telling you, if you've never discovered Renaissance before, if you learned nothing from this show today, go and listen to some of these albums, especially the ones at the top that I mentioned. They're just really, really good. And Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. What is coming up this weekend, you might ask? Going to do a Monsters Den episode. I haven't decided which one yet. Still figuring that out. I'll either do that later today or tomorrow. Jack Toledano and I might get to that Iced Earth episode, top 10 songs, power metal band, this weekend, maybe tomorrow. If not, it'll be during the week. I am also preparing, getting ready. When I say I'm preparing, that means I'm getting myself geared up to do a ranking the albums of Jimi Hendrix, and that's going to be a special one. So in that one episode, I'm going to rank those 3 studio albums before he died. I'm going to rank all the classic live albums, and I'm going to rank the posthumous stuff, all right, the stuff that they released after he died, at least the ones that I have. I have a good chunk of them, and, they reissued those in different configurations so many times, so I'm going to kind of do the best with what I have. I got so much Hendrix stuff, so I'm going to try and it's going to be a big, massive episode, so for all your Hendrix nuts, that's coming. And also, because it's been requested by a lot of you, and Anthony, I did not forget, Jeff Beck. I'm going to do a Jeff Beck ranking the albums. It's going to be, the Jeff Beck group, okay, the Truth era, Jeff Beck group era, the Fusion era, Beck Bogart and the Peace, and Guitar Shop, and the 80s stuff, the 90s stuff, all the recent stuff. So if it's got Jeff Beck in the title, no, I'm not going to do the Yardbirds, or whatever. It's just the Jeff Beck stuff. Okay, so that's coming also too. I don't know if I'll get to it this weekend, but that's coming during the week, right? So all the stuff you can look forward to, as well as new release. I'm going to review the new Testament, because I got that here, the new Candlemass, the new Crypt Trip. So all sorts of fun stuff coming up this week, guys. So you don't want to miss any of it. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you tell your friends, okay? And thanks for everything, all right? We'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.